All right, welcome everyone. It's 1 o'clock. I believe Councillor Schumacher is with us virtually. Is that correct? She is. Hello, hello.
Hello.
All right. I declare we do have quorum. Deputy Mayor is away, but the rest of us are here. And I'm going to ask Councillor Cloutier to read the land acknowledgement.
Through you. Sorry about that. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg under the terms, I screwed that up, and under the terms of the Robinson Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you very much. All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that Planning Council meeting agenda dated December 4, 2024 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair Stone. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on agenda item 4.2. That's report DEV 2024-110, CPPA 35-2024, HTE, Burnell Road Management Corporation, 490 Muskoka Road 3 North, and that's due to ongoing business relationship with Burnell Road Management.
Great. Thank you for that. Anyone else? I see no one. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public portion of the meeting to consider applications to amend the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. The procedure of the public meeting will be as follows. A brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present in person or electronically will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting the application. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the planner, or anyone giving presentation. Once the public meeting is concluded, the input received and proposed amendments will be considered by Council. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address, and please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Please be informed that an appellant must provide an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission prior to the passage of the CPP bylaw amendment. Otherwise, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. If you wish to be notified of the passage of the bylaw, you must file either with the recording secretary or with the clerk a written request for notification prior to the passage of the proposed bylaw. Each notice of complete application and public meeting included an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, and notice was required to be posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. And with all of that, we're going to move on to the first item. Lisa is speaking to the Cardwell Lake application.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you, the subject property for this application is located at 596 Cardwell Lake Road. The property is within the rural designation in the official plan and the rural RU Conservation C and Flood Zone F precincts in the Community Planning Permit Bylaw with natural constraints overlays 1 and 2 indicating wetlands and steep slopes. The property fronts onto and is accessed by Cardwell Lake Road, which is a seasonally maintained local road. The purpose and effect of this application is to allow for the construction of a 116 square meter single detached dwelling and a 743 square meter detached accessory building. As you know, Dwellings are not permitted where there is no access to a year-round municipally maintained road in the rural precinct, and as such, the applicant is proposing to amend the precinct on a portion of the subject lands from rural RU to waterfront residential 120 meters WR2. Year-round residential dwellings are typically only permitted on properties accessible by a year-round maintained road, except in waterfront precincts. Waterfront residential properties are typically only appropriate for properties located on water bodies. In all other cases, only a woodland retreat would be permitted. In this instance, there are some concerns about whether the water feature on the lot should be considered a wetland or a water body. Additionally, the road is seasonally maintained only, and in order to reach the property, you do have to travel through sections that are prone to flooding hazards. Year-round maintenance on the town's road allowance stops at 412 Cardwell Lake Road, which is where that red star is there. There is an existing woodland retreat in the area of the brown box shown on the map here. This is where the applicants would like to construct the proposed dwelling and storage building. They are also proposing to use a portion of the storage building as a barn as part of a hobby farm operation. It should be noted that hobby farms are not permitted within the WR2 precinct. Respecting the water feature on the site, the applicant's agent is suggesting it is a water body. MNRF mapping indicates this feature is an unevaluated wetland. Historical aerial imagery, as shown on the screen, shows it as a wetland in some years at certain times of year and a more open water area in others. Photos taken during midsummer, such as the one shown on the screen here from 1987, show a significant decrease in open water in comparison to the more recent aerial photos, which are taken during the spring and fall, when leaves are off the trees and water levels are generally higher. Staff also reviewed Ontario base map data from 1986, which shows the feature as a wetland, and the MNRF's current Make a Map tool, which also labels it as a wetland. Town operations staff have also noted significant fluctuations in the extent of open water as observed during maintenance activities. Based on this, it is staff's opinion that it should be treated as a wetland unless appropriately evaluated by a qualified professional and deemed otherwise. The proposal to change the precinct to waterfront residential also ignores the fact that the open water feature is completely surrounded by wetland, and as such, shoreline development would not be appropriate around the perimeter of this feature. Additionally, permitting the requested change in precinct in this location could also lead to further applications for new lot creation based on waterfront residential requirements, which may not be appropriate considering the potential sensitivity of the surrounding wetland features. Further to this, the whole of the open water area, as well as a strip of land surrounding it, are described as Crown Reserve lands in the property descriptions. Therefore, they are not owned by the applicant, nor are they under jurisdiction of the town, and their occupation or acquisition would require approval from the MNRF. Respecting access, staff are concerned that the seasonal road providing access to the property traverses a portion of land that is in the flood zone constraint and have noted areas that were underwater at the time of site inspection. This causes concern with regard to safe access and the suitability of a year-round dwelling. The provincial planning statement, which replaced the provincial policy statement earlier this year, states that development shall not be permitted within areas that would be rendered inaccessible to people and vehicles during times of flooding hazard unless it has been demonstrated that the site has safe access and appropriate for the nature of the development and the natural hazard. This has not been demonstrated in this case at this time. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. Given the above noted concerns and outstanding issues, staff recommend that should the applicants choose to move forward with the request to amend the precinct on a portion of the property, they should consult with the MNRF regarding the Crown Reserve and have a technical study prepared to evaluate the significance of the wetland, including the open water feature and the surrounding area and access to the site. In consideration of the constraints, staff would be willing to work with the applicants on appropriate options for developing the property. And on the screen now are the existing structures, being the woodland retreat / hunt camp and a couple of accessory structures.
All right, thank you. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Wayne Simpson with Tulloch Engineering, 80 Main Street West, Huntsville P1H1W9. Pretty good. Appreciate the staff presentation, and I just would like to make some comments, obviously. Firstly, I'm representing the two owners, Mr. Vieira and Aguilar. The property was purchased just a few years ago, I believe 3 years ago. And the property is over 500 acres in size, and there's an additional 300 acres that they own nearby, if not just across the road type thing. They purchased the property for family recreational purposes. They're avid outdoor people. There's over 40 kilometers of trails that are cut through the property, through the forested areas and old logging roads. And they pay someone to sort of to supervise those to make sure that they're always cleared and whatnot. The family are fishers and hunters and snowmobilers and hikers and ATVers and all that sort of stuff. So it's really a family recreational property that costs a substantial amount of money on it. There's no intention to ever build it, although the proposal is to construct a dwelling. There's no intention that anybody will ever live on this property. They're proposing basically a winterized cottage for the comfort of the family, and they would propose to install a septic system where none exists presently, other than pit purviews and such things, and a large storage building for personal vehicles, recreational vehicles, property maintenance equipment, and whatnot. So that's why the building may appear to be large in the description, and it would be. Currently on the property, there's a cleared area where there's a small building. It's about 1,200 square feet, 1116 square meters. It was constructed as a hunt camp in 1993 under a permit. And the current uses in the property, because it's on a seasonally maintained municipal road, is only a hunt camp. And no permits can be secured for any other buildings or structures on the whole of the property. And the hunt camp, I believe, is oversized slightly, and it would be legal non-complying in that respect. So even making it larger might be a bit of a challenge, but the reality is a hunt camp can only be used a maximum of 60 days a year, and you don't own 800 acres to use just 60 days a year. So the provision in the CP bylaw that's important is the one that states section 2.241, which Lisa has described as saying that you can't get any building permit for a property that doesn't front on a year-round municipally maintained road. But in a subsequent section, it says seasonally maintained roads, notwithstanding the other provisions where a lot is in the waterfront precinct and butts a seasonally maintained road, a use, building, or structure may be used on such lot in accordance with the provisions of the precinct. So in this case, there would be a number of precincts on the property. But, the only way they'll ever be able to build on this property is either for the municipality to relax the requirement that, the restriction that you can't build on a seasonally maintained road, or that this property be included in the waterfront precinct. We initially put forward that suggestion, but it was dismissed by the staff because of their observation on some M&R mapping, M&R make a map type thing that shows all the cute little symbols that this is a large wetland. And so we did finally, when the previous attempt to do something with access along the seasonally maintained road sort of fell flat, we decided to look more closely at this body of water. And we discovered that indeed it is, staff characterized it, the water on the thing, the water body, as an unevaluated wetland with an open water area and terms like that. There's reluctance to use the word lake per se. But when I look at the official plan, Huntsville official plan, excuse me for a second here, section 7.2.1, the operative phrase in this section is that a wetland area is defined as having a water body, any water body greater than 8 hectares in area, so 20 acres. So you can keep that in mind, but there's no suggestion in that that a wetland with surrounding a open water area would not be considered a water body. I don't know how someone could draw that conclusion. So the important thing is it's not whether it's a lake or whether it's a wetland or whether it's whatever. The reality is the determination is based on a water body. And then it goes on to describe in the official Huntsville official plan that all lands that physically and functionally relate to the shoreline, even though they may extend more than 150 meters from the water body, can be included in the waterfront designation. That's really inconsequential in this case because the clients have no interest in doing anything within that proximity of the lake. You know, and I refer to it as like, that because, they have a cleared area on their property where the existing building is, where they could build a building of substantial size, where the driveway leads to and from in an area where they can install a proper septic system and use that as their sort of, ground zero on the property to venture out. So any discussions about impacts on the wetland area, features around the lake are pretty inconsequential in this case because there's no plans to do that. And then it goes on to say when looking at the criteria to include property in a waterfront designation, one of the criteria is the physical relationship of the land to the water is the most important factor in identifying the land which is oriented to or away from the waterfront area and will be based on factors including drainage and visual connection or potential visual connection if vegetation is removed. In this instance, a building was built in 1993, and I don't know if there are other buildings prior to that, but coincidentally, this building was built on 500 acres in the only location where you can actually see the lake. So someone thought, if we're going to build something on this property, even as a hunt camp, it would be nice to be able to look out at the lake, and there's a strong visual orientation there. And it's not close to the lake. There's intermediate vegetation, grasses and shrubbery and that sort of thing, but it looks out over the lake. And then it goes on to say that in section 7.2.4 talks about the specific character of each waterfront area that varies from as a result of its location, its lake size, physical and natural attributes, and historic development. And in this case, the historic development had some orientation towards that. I think really what I want to really point out, though, is the next section, 7.2.5, the varied topography, forested landscape, and shorelines, views, and panoramas, habitat, as well as the access to water bodies of water have attracted recreation and leisure-oriented development and strongly contribute to the character of the waterfront. Many natural heritage features and areas, including the shoreline itself, exist within this designation. So you can imagine lakes that have, weedy shorelines, emerging grasses, Rice Lake, Scugog Lake, probably along the canal going between Penn and Ferry, Cookson's Bay. I mean, just because there's a wetland doesn't mean it's not part of that larger water body. And so our contention is that it is that. And if you want to push the button, yeah, okay, you can do that. Great, appreciate that. So I know you can't read that right away yet, but that's the Crown patent that was issued in August 1911. And if you could go to the next slide, Lisa, I appreciate it. Okay. So what it describes, this is the Crown land patent for lots 3 and 4. This wetland feature is on lot 3, and then the one to the east of it is another 100 acres. So these lands were conveyed under the original patent are described as being 137 acres, where normally that would be 200 acres. Being the broken lot number 3, which is the subject lot, containing 37 acres, and lot number 4 containing 100 acres in the 11th concession of Stisted, reserving an allowance of 10 feet in perimeter around the shore of the lake within the limits of the said lot 3, also reserving the land covered with the water of the said lake. So when this was patented in 1911, where you would expect it would have been 100 acres, it's described as basically containing the equivalent of a 67-acre lake and 33 acres of dry land. The dry land were conveyed under the original Crown patent. The 10-foot strip around the lake was no doubt maintains, kept by the Crown so that someone could access the lake, whether they're portaging or whatever, that they would have a right to access the water body. And we appreciate that the limits of the lake fluctuate. And when we look at the zoning map now, and you see the water body and you see the flood plains around it, you can imagine that this lake would go up and down depending upon how many beavers there and how busy they've been and whatever. So the reality is, it is a lake as viewed by the Ministry of Natural Resources. And I would want to point out that that in the District of Muskoka official plan, the water body is colored in pink around the whole water body as being in the waterfront designation, the waterfront area in the Muskoka official plan. And the Muskoka official plan talks about the approximate limits are shown on this Schedule A. The exact limits shall be determined by the district in conjunction with the relevant area municipality and taking into regard the official plan, whatnot. And the waterfront area generally includes those lands extending 150 meters from any lake greater than 8 hectares.
So that's 10 minutes. So are you done?
Well, I just want to say quickly that, the important thing is to recognize that any concern about there being further lots developed on the lake, any intrusions into the wetland, those are not founded in the reality that these people are outdoors people. They're there. They want to use the lands. They have no intention of doing. The sole purpose of this is to get the designation in place so that they can do what they want to do in the cleared area. And we appreciate the committee's consideration in that regard.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone present that would like to speak to this application? Seeing no one, is there anyone online that would like to speak to this? And you would need to raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Council members, comments or questions? Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you both for your presentations on this. I do have a quick question, really. The report that's before us is suggested for a deferral. So, and with the intention that I think the way you put it, Lisa, is if the applicant chooses to move forward with the request that you'd be happy to work with the applicants on appropriate options for developing the property. And what I'm hearing from actually both is the waterfront designation is not necessarily the most appropriate for a number of reasons, but understanding why you moved in that direction. I guess 2 questions to you, Lisa, and that is, you referenced the necessity of the applicant to approach MNR for purchase. So one, I'm given the size of the property that there clearly is a building site outside of any of the wetland area and all of that. I wasn't sure the importance of that. But 2, you make reference to what are the appropriate options, plural. So I'd be curious to know about both of those.
Sure. So first, for your first question, the portion around the open water feature is Crown Land Reserve. So if they wanted it within the waterfront residential designation, if they wanted to put a dock up on that portion of the land, they would have to do a Crown Land disposition or get an occupancy permit from the Crown to use that, different from a shore road allowance that the town can sell. And then for your second question, for other options, we could look at an amendment to allow specific development on this site, or, I mean, originally they had applied for a Class 2 CPP, and I had told them at a staff level, we can't support this because it's on a seasonally maintained road, not on a year-round maintained road. So they could still move forward with a CPP application, would come before you as a Class 3, and then it would be up to planning council to decide. We do have an alternative resolution today that might work in place of that if you choose to move forward with that. So there are a number of options depending on what council's leaning towards.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate that response. So as far as the MNR, from my perspective, I think quite clearly there isn't any, if you look at the property too, there really isn't any desire to build or dock or I live on a lake. It's actually called a lake, very much like this, and we wouldn't be putting any boat features on it. So if it's known that that's not the direction of the applicant, then almost that one can be parked, in my mind anyway. And then moving back to, I would at some point be interested in seeing that alternative wording, just to see what kind of direction we'd be providing on that. But I can wait to see that.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you both for the reports. So 2 questions. The first question is about the actual structure that's there now. This may be directed to you, Wayne. The applicant is saying that they want to upgrade the plumbing or I guess the plumbing, but they're not opting to live there permanently. It's just a seasonal, like a cottage. That's correct, right? There's no intention to live there.
Yes, you're correct. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the existing building looks like it was built maybe by Jed Clampett in the Ozarks or something, but it's not befitting it. There's no plumbing in it. The gray water just spills out in the ground. So the idea would be to replace it with something in the same sort of order of magnitude size, whether it's 1,200, 1,300 square feet or whatever, but to have it winterized to be able to use it year round. So it has to be deemed to be a dwelling for that purpose. But again, yeah, there's no intention of doing anything, outside of that cleared area right now. And if I could make one quick comment on what we're asking for is in accordance with, consistent and conforms to the OP of both the Huntsville and the district OP, which is already showing it as a waterfront area. But if there's any concerns about development being too close to the water body or the property being subdivided, we would certainly entertain restrictions in terms of distance from shoreline, which is again a variable feature, and also, or even a minimum lot acre size, so that if the minimum size is 400 acres or something like that, then it's pretty hard to divide that lake into anything. So
Thank you for that. I guess my second question is, if I may, through you, Mr. Chair. The second question is, if we do this, or if we approve or defer this and allow it to become the water residential precinct, then in perpetuity, if it gets sold, is anyone able to do, I guess, can they do something else? Do the regulations or the stipulations that we're putting on this today, like a no dock going to the water, does that continue in perpetuity? Does that, if the property should be sold? And this may be a question for Lisa or for Wayne.
if I could comment, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Typically, the municipality requires site plan approval for any development on a shoreline. So in that point, there's obviously the evidence of a wetland feature, sensitive habitat, shoreline habitat, fish habitat or whatever. So the municipality could require any technical studies to prove that. In terms of the 10-foot reserve that the Crown owns around the lake, if you can imagine the lake was 67 acres at one time, and it's not that big now. It's probably in the neighborhood of 40, 45 acres. You can imagine that 10-foot strip is sort of sitting way off beyond the current shoreline. It's sort of out amongst the trees and the scrub grass. So, the acquisition of that, we thought we could make an application to buy the reserve as to demonstrate that this was a lake. But in investigating that further, we realized that the surveyors would have to go back and try to retrieve the field notes from the original surveys at the turn of the century, last century. And so it's an expensive proposition and really would accomplish no purpose other than to affirm that it is a lake.
Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. So to save yourself a lot of headaches, I know it's nice to look at the lake, but you've got close to 800 acres in the two properties, and they just want to use it for recreation. Can you not find a better spot or a different spot to build this place? I know it's level and cut there, but I mean, I think you'd have lots of options to build another place rather than down on the water.
Go ahead.
If I can, yeah, the existing building is about 80 meters from the water's edge or something like that. Anyway, it's a cleared area. It's the closest proximity to Cardwell Lake Road. There's a built driveway in. I think 500 acres, certainly there would be other things, but, you know, again, you're getting deeper into the property. And if the access issue is a concern to the municipality, it's best that they get off of Cardwell Lake Road at the earliest opportunity. And this would be the earliest opportunity unless they go to the east side of the lake. So I think that the area they're working with, they want to work with, is the area that was been cleared and altered already. And it's access from the existing road, the driveway, but it's a bit out of sight. Even though it's close to the roadway, it winds its way in. And so that cleared area is somewhat sheltered and protected.
Councillor Schumacher has a question.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone. I think Councillor Fitzgerald and I are very familiar with Cardwell Lake Road. My question, you talk about, well, Councillor Renwick had kind of asked you to clarify the year-round access versus just wanting to past the 60 days. My concern is year-round access would end when we stop maintaining the road to a certain point, or are they looking to plow the road themselves in the winter?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I understand that the road is already plowed through this area. There are a number of properties, recreational properties on Cardwell Lake and Muskoka Lakes Township just beyond this as well. So my client tells me that that there is plowing done. And in terms of any little limited bit of flooding on the roadway, my client says, you know, he has no problem. These people are outdoors people. They drive Ford Expeditions and Hummers or whatever they might drive. So they're not concerned about that. And so I think, so the road would, you know, they would do as anybody else would do if they've got a cottage and it's on, I mean, seasonally maintained road. They might share the cost of plowing it with somebody else if they want to get in, or they may park their vehicles, you know, short of the, we're on the maintained section and hop on snowmobiles or do whatever else they need to get into their property.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I would like to see the class 3 option that we may be proposing later. A lot of people come up to their places in the winter and they figure out access. And my neighbor across the road on the Muskoka River digs with a shovel for 6 hours to spend 2 days at Christmas in his little cabin. You know, and they should have the right to do that. So I'd like to see the class 3 option. I think I can support it.
Councillor Clerk.
Thanks, Chair Stone. I think to say that to the applicants that they can improve anything to do with the property seems a little unfair to me. I mean, it's a huge property. We're talking about, Wayne, was it 400 acres, something? It was big anyway. So I'm open to looking at options to try to find a solution for these folks because, I mean, it's, the size of the property is certainly not the issue here, so.
All right. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, I think just a quick comment. I think instead of deferring, I'd rather see a solution come today because even the staff time that Lisa and the team would have to spend on the file, investigating with M&R and everything else would be wasted time. And I think the tone at the table is to try to get this person the ability to build a dwelling on the property. So I'd be interested in moving forward with a solution that satisfies the applicant.
All right. So do we have a motion to amend, or Mayor Alcock?
Yes, but I understand that we have potential wording already. So if you need someone to put that on the floor, I'd certainly be
You will?
happy.
All right. Is
I
there a
will.
seconder? All right, Councillor Morrison. All right. There's a motion. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by, oh no. Right? Oh. This is the original motion, and then we'll go to the amendment. So moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that Planning Council defer Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment, CPPA 36, 2024 HTE, the purpose and effect of which to change the precinct on a portion of the subject lands from rural precinct to a waterfront residential 120-meter precinct to facilitate the construction of 116 square meter dwelling and 743 square meter detached accessory building. And that was the original motion. Oh, my. All right, so I'm gonna have to read this. All right, so this is the proposed amendment, moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitute motion DEV 2024-109 CPPA 36-2024 HTE 596 Cardwell Lake Road for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve community planning permit bylaw. What's this? We're going to take 2 or 3 minutes, if you would. Substitute. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitutes motion DEV 2024-109, CPPA 36, 2024 HTE, 596 Cardwell Lake Road for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment CPPA 36, 2024 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on a portion of the subject lands from a rural precinct to a rural with exception X precinct in order to permit the development of 116 square meter single detached dwelling and a 743 square meter detached accessory building on a lot without frontage on a year-round maintained municipal road. Require a community planning permit to be issued prior to the development proceeding on the lot. And require that the community planning permit shall not be issued unless the Director of Development Services is satisfied that the following matters have been addressed in addition to all other applicable requirements of the CPP bylaw. 1. Site plan drawing is submitted to the satisfaction of the Town of Huntsville to demonstrate that all development is sufficiently set back from all natural and hazard constraints located on the lot. And 2, an agreement is entered into between the owners and the Town of Huntsville to be registered on title to the lands, acknowledging that access will be on a non-year-round maintained road and no municipal services will be available, and that the dwelling will be fully sprinklered or include other appropriate fire suppression or mitigation measures to the satisfaction of the town. All right. Any comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries. All right. And now I'm going to call the main motion as substituted. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. Kelsey, we're on to the next application with Brunel Road Management Corporation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 490 Muskoka Road 3. The property is within the urban residential designation in the official plan and within the urban residential low precinct with natural constraint overlay 2. The application proposes to construct a 10-unit multiple dwelling building. The community bylaw amendment, planning permit bylaw amendment, is required to change the precinct on the lot from urban residential low to urban residential high with exception. The exception is for the following: to permit the 10 units in the 2-story multiple dwelling building, reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3 meters for the multiple dwelling building, reduce the minimum required number of parking spaces from 15 to 12, reduce the required aisle width for a double lane aisle from 6.7 meters to 6 meters, permit a parking area associated with a multiple dwelling within 1 meter of abutting UR1 precinct, low, reduce the width of the required landscaping buffer not abutting the street along the northern property line from 1.5 meters to 0 meters, and reduce the width of the required landscape buffer not abutting the street on the eastern property line from 1.5 meters to 1 meter. So you can see how this lot kind of fits around the abutting property. So it's kind of hard to orient yourself because it's not square, but here it is on the screen. Here's just some elevations of the building, the front and the rear. The UR1 precinct permits low-density residential, such as single detached dwellings, duplexes, and semi-detached dwellings. A multiple dwelling is not permitted within the urban residential low precinct, therefore an amendment is needed. Relief from several of the community planning permit bylaw provisions is needed to further push back the building from the abutting residential property to the southeast. The rear yard setback reduction is from, as I mentioned, 7.5 meters to 3 meters to accommodate the greater setback from the house in front. The rear lot line is abutting the urban residential medium precinct to the back that's along Campus Trail and is currently vacant. The development will be also deficient 3 parking spaces. The development is intended to be a purpose-built rental smart value housing, which typically requires a lower parking ratio. The property also is within the urban residential area, so tenants can access public transportation and tend to be less car dependent. The reduced aisle width, the requirement is informed by fire access in the building code. The fire department has confirmed that this 6-meter aisle width is appropriate and in compliance. The landscape buffer along the northern property line, so you could kind of see it. Let's see if I could do the laser here. There's a building right there. Is to be reduced from 1.5 meters to 0 meters to accommodate the parking area. This reduction is only for a portion of the landscape buffer, whereas the rest of the 1.5 buffer is provided for the remainder of the northern property line. There's also relief required for the multiple dwelling parking area within 1 meter of the abutting UR1 precinct. The reduction in width of the landscape buffer along the eastern property line from 1.5 meters to 1 meter. There is a 3-meter wide landscape buffer proposed along the southern side of the driveway and a 14-meter landscape buffer in front of the proposed building. However, the southeast corner, where it kind of goes around, it's quite deficient. It's only going to be 1 meter. The parking spaces 9 to 12, if you're looking at the site plan, are larger spaces. So over 3 meters, they're 3 meters in width. So that's inclusive. So there is more large spaces than required. So reconfiguration of the parking area may allow for the increased setback or further landscaping buffer along that constrained corner. The built-up area in Huntsville is the main target for intensification. The property and Muskoka Road 3 North are also identified under the intensification corridor where growth is further focused. When developing a medium or high density residential development, the official plan identifies considerations for compatibility. In this instance, the development is in a transition area in an intensification corridor with low density residential directly abutting the property, but nearby high density residential, commercial, and industrial uses on Campus Trail and Muskoka Road 3 North. The area appears to be appropriate for high density residential based on the surrounding land uses. The building is pushed towards the rear lot line to create distance from the budding low density residential. Landscaping buffer is also proposed along the front of the building to mitigate visual impacts. However, the applicant has not provided a significant buffering adjacent to the southeast corner of the surrounding urban residential 1 property, where the parking area is only 1 meter from the budding property in the southeast corner. Further consideration of a parking reconfiguration and the location of a larger the location of required larger parking spaces would appear to provide more space for a wider landscape buffer around this corner. Constraint mapping also identifies stratum 2 deer wintering habitat. The official plan discusses where there is stratum 2 deer wintering habitat that conifers shall be retained, which provides shelter and food for deer. Based on a site visit, there's minimal conifer cover, and existing anthropogenic impacts on the site suggest that it has a low probability of being deer wintering habitat. However, conservation of existing vegetation around the perimeter of the property and in front of the building, as well as revegetation where feasible, have been included in the application and can be implemented through the community planning permit. When we're looking at the E1 schedule of the official plan, it discusses stormwater management and the requirement for stormwater management and construction mitigation informed by best practices. A recommendation of such plans, the recommendations from these plans are implemented through the community planning permit. Given the sloping of the property and the scale of development, as well as other constraints, a functional servicing report was requested to determine if the if the stormwater management would be functional on the property. The functional servicing report has not yet been provided as the drainage may impact the property to the southeast and the Muskoka Road 3. And there's limited space to accommodate conventional, thank you. Just 2 seconds. I ate a cookie right before this presentation, so I'm sorry. And there's limited space on site to accommodate conventional stormwater management infrastructure. Therefore, staff are unable to make a recommendation without first reviewing the supporting report. District staff would not be opposed for the approval of the application, provided that the commercial entrance can be issued for access onto the district road. A satisfactory stormwater management report can be provided to the District of Muskoka prior to approval and the issuance of a connection permit. The application was circulated internally in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. 5 letters of objection have been received, some prior to the report being, the agenda being posted, and 3 following. A lot of concerns regarding reduction of setbacks, landscape buffers, vegetation removal, grading and stormwater impacts, noise and visual impacts, and pedestrian movement along the busy street. The Operations Department also requested a stormwater management report to be included in the functional servicing submission. As noted above, staff requested the functional servicing report be provided in support of the amendment application. Comments have been provided to the applicant regarding this requirement, as well as suggestions for the further buffer on the southeast corner. Once the report has been received, the issues raised in this report and by the public are addressed, staff would be in a position to provide a recommendation in relation to this application. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for all of that. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
Good afternoon, Chairman Stone,
Good afternoon.
members of the Planning Committee. John P. Gallagher here with Ken Oben from Bernal Road Management. I think Kelsey has provided a detailed analysis of the application. There are a few items that we'd like to address and go over. I've been working with Bernal Road Management, providing rental housing throughout Huntsville for many years. They're up to 37 units that they've provided for this municipality, with the most recent being the 16 units over on Goldie Street. Before that, it was over on Veterans Way. We provided 6 units over there. I think it's important to note that when the official plan was created, there was a sub-designation put in for intensification along certain main arteries throughout the municipality, and this was one of the areas that was provided. When we look at the transition, there are some multiple dwellings south of the subject lands in the form of multiple units on one property. And then to the rear of the subject lands, we're into high density with buildings probably in excess of, or up to and in excess of 11 meters in height. And again, those are well beyond the intensification designation. The owners are proposing a 10-story, 2-unit apartment building, and it only has a ground floor area of 302.5. And when we look at compatibility, one of the items is around size. And in this situation, we have a lot coverage about 18.2%, whereas 40 is permitted. In the building height, it is a low profile design at 6.4 meters in height, well below the permitted 11 meters height for the zone. It's even less than what a single family is allowed at 9 meters. When we came up with the plan originally, we had the parking tucked in between the single family dwelling and the building. And we had heard some concerns from that neighbor, so I was asked to go back and relook at it. And so we came up with a new plan to basically reconfigure the parking lot. The application requires 6-meter side yards from the building on either side of the building, which we've achieved in the back. And the current house is probably about 2 meters to the north property boundary already, so we're seeing a significant increase in that area. The purpose of the reduction of the rear yard was to push it further away from the single-family dwelling that was fronting on 11B. And we were only required a 6-meter setback, but now we're up to 14 meters, but we have decreased the rear yard 3, knowing full well that the land to the rear of that is zoned for high density residential, and will likely be similar type structures of condominiums for sale. The property itself is within walking distance to most services, including the doctor's offices and the hospital. The building will be built to the most recent OBC, which requires energy efficiency. The location uses an underutilized piece of land where municipal services exist and where intensification has been promoted in the official plan. There are no requirements for extending roads or services. A 2-meter high fence was proposed to buffer the single-family dwelling that abuts the property, and that was both along the driveway and along the east side of the building, or property line in front of the building. And with that, we've tried to, when we reconfigured the parking, we also allowed for additional buffering in between the building and that single-family dwelling there. The proposal is based on full municipal water and sewer services, and we did have our pre-consultation meeting with the district, and services can be provided. Looking at the consideration for new development, there's a number of items, and I've provided in my report basically the details around how that new building provides for meeting that criteria, specifically with regards to the density and coverage of the site and maintaining proper setbacks. The owner's intent, again, is to work with the district to obtain funding for housing for this project. One-bedroom units are a highly required form of rental and need in the area. The site has great access to highways 60 and 11 as well. The application conforms with the district official plan, and it definitely meets the provincial policy statement by providing affordable housing and rental housing while meeting the servicing policies of the plan. There are no natural or man-made hazards on the land. It's not subject to flooding. We did ask for a number of exceptions to address some of the items, and I did see that there was a couple of letters of objection, and just to address some of those, I sent around a drawing showing the sides of the building along that north boundary, and the intent of that is to say that in our reconfiguration of the drawing, we did push the parking back from that structure about 1 meter, so we did get a little more buffer as opposed to 0, and it only takes up about 12 meters of the length of that building with the siding on it. With regards to the drainage and servicing, we did retain Pinestone Engineering. They did provide a letter back in the beginning of November, basically saying that the water and sewer services would be brought in from Muskoka Road 3, and the stormwater management would be provided through a combination of parking lot storage and dry bioswale as illustrated on the plan. And our intent isn't to, we're not allowed to impact off-site properties specifically on the north or around that single-family dwelling. So by reconfiguring the parking lot, we have a catch basin in the middle of that, and it runs to that dry bioswale along the boundary. It should be noted that there's significant conifers along that area that we've tried to protect and retain as well. One of the concerns raised was with respect to the buffer. For the most part, with the single-family dwelling, we're going to be 6 meters away from both the side lot lines, providing ample space, meeting the bylaw in that regard. Currently, the dwelling sits at about 2 meters setback. We did ask for an exception for parking, and we have in the past proven that we just don't need that much parking for the types of one-bedrooms that are occurring there. And I think Gouldy Street will be another example. When we came last time, we had all the parking. You asked us to cut it back, and it's still not required to the same degree that we've provided there. We did see the comments from Greystone. Again, Greystone has significant land holdings where multiple dwellings for sale are going to occur. And again, there's no objection. The property is already zoned for the use. And what we would ask council to consider is that this is for rental units, which again, not everyone can afford a brand new condominium in this area. And we've been lucky insofar as we've been able to spread these units throughout the municipality as opposed to concentrating them in any one area. I think, like I said, from where we started, we amended the drawing once we heard of the concerns that were raised or risen, and we've tried to address those through redesign of it. My clients have, because of the timing, the feds and the province and the district want these projects to be ready to be built in the spring for funding. And my clients would like to proceed with that and would respectfully request that the bylaw be approved. We still have to do a CPP1 permit to address the finer details around buffering, etc. I see my time's up. So again, we would respectfully ask committee to approve the application. We are willing to provide, with staff working through some of these buffer issues. Kelsey made a good point about, our 3 spots or 4 spots that were 3 meters. Again, the requirement's 2.6. We had the space, so, it would just provide additional buffering adjacent Mr. Wilson there, but we did provide a 2-meter high fence all the way around his property, and the scale of the building is only 6.4 meters. I'd be glad to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Is there anyone present that would like to speak to this application? If you would, please come down. Welcome. If you could just state your name and mailing address.
I'm Kevin Wilson. I live at 486 Muskoka Road 3 North. I am the property abutting at the southeast. This is my first day doing anything like this, so
Relax, we're easy going.
little bit nervous. So effectively, for me, I firmly believe that this matter should be, there is no funding at this point for affordable housing with Burnell Road Group, and I would certainly hope that this is treated as such. If they were to be approved for any of this at any size or scale, it could be rented to anybody, not necessarily affordable housing. So with that, I have I emailed in last night and this morning everything that I could. I apologize for my tardiness. Despite being an electrician, I'm not the most tech savvy person when it comes to computers and that. I had some printer issues and whatnot. But the issue for me in regards to this is I totally support affordable housing as well. It's the elevation changes between my backyard and
the property in question here is like a full story. So the base of the structure at grade is like 10 feet higher than my backyard. And so I've provided photos of my arts and crafts interpretation of what it will look like, and they put it as closely to scale as I could. There's one where the structure will actually be much more imposing and larger than that, which will be casting shadow onto my property in the summertime, likely sometime after 1 to 2 p.m. In the wintertime, that could be as early as noon or before that, putting the backside of my property in complete shade at all times, as well as where they have the proposed parking lot. There's some existing spruce trees there that are like the last remaining bit of what would be some kind of privacy for myself. So with the structure being 10 units, everybody's windows are going to be looking straight down into my backyard and into the back of my house and into my bedroom. And there doesn't seem to be any provision for trees or anything of that nature, as well as the way that the hill slopes, again, being a drainage issue, is how is all of that going to be redirected away from my property? I spent quite a bit of time. My house was built in 1946. It's been a labor of love, sometimes hate, but it's my first house, and that's what it is. I also, based on all of these things, due to the elevation and the what I believe to be much too high density for that property, how it will impact my quality of life and the value of my first home. I've put a lot of time and energy and my own money into trying to create a space, both inside and out, which I'm not done yet, but that is going to be worth something someday, and that I can enjoy freely. And I really firmly believe that what is proposed here is going to impact all of those things. It will be very detrimental to me. So with everything that I submitted yesterday and this morning, I added in what I believe to be acceptable, which would be a fourplex. The property is currently zoned for a triplex. So a fourplex would be a little bit more. That could be affordable housing. Fourplexes are extremely, or it can be lucrative from a business standpoint. It helps maintain all of the green spaces. Parking is no longer an issue. It will not be casting shadows or anything of that nature over my property. The spruce trees that are already there would create adequate privacy for the most part, and I would like to see a fence, it seems high, but of 10 feet across the back and the side to maintain my privacy and separation between the two properties. And again, with reducing the size of the proposal, it clears up all of the issues for amount of parking spaces and the majority of the issues of setbacks and casting shadows. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak to this application? Come on down.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
I'm Kim Joyner. My husband and I own the property north of this proposed property and development. So the zero setbacks are very concerning to us. The property elevation is higher, obviously, than our property. We sit quite a bit lower. So we have about a foot between our back wall and the proposed parking. And there's a dilapidated chain link fence. So certainly it impedes, privacy and security. Our concern is also that bank. So if there's a lot of pressure against that bank, I think in one of the pictures you could see how close the proposed parking is to our back wall. And again, with the elevation, the top of our office wall inside is level with the parking. So bollards or something would have to be put in place to make sure that there's no damage or erosion into our property. Our cold storage space is a flat roof at the back of the property. Seems to me that that would be an enticing place for kiddos or others, if there's no fence line to separate, to jump on top of and perhaps linger. So those are our specific concerns, and certainly water runoff.
All right. Can you give me your name and address again?
Sure, it's Kim Joyner, and our office is 492 Muskoka Road 3 North.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? Sure,
I would just like to say one more quick thing.
30 seconds.
Number one being, I would like to add that I am also representing the neighbor to the south, Murray Allen. His address is 492 Muskoka Road 3 North. He was unable to be here today. He is the head mechanic for Fowler's. So he's repairing the plows that are trying to keep our streets clear right now.
Yes.
And I would also like to state for the record that if this proposal in its current standing is put through, that I would like to take it to the Ontario Land Tribunal.
All right. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, anyone online that would like to speak to the application, please raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see one hand raised, and I'll bring them into the meeting.
All right.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Stone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you yet.
Oh, I can see myself on my.
Oh, here we go. You're
Okay.
good to go.
All right, I can see myself twice now, which is odd, but I'll survive. Okay, thank you. My name is Josh Morgan. I'm a registered professional planner with the firm Morgan Planning and Development in Orillia. I had hoped to make the trip up there to be present with you in person today, but the roads were very poor and the visibility was even worse. So I apologize for not being there in person, but hopefully you can accept my comments here virtually. So I'm here today representing the owners of 15 Campus Trail, being a company that's associated with Greystone Construction. I'm quite familiar with the Campus Trail community. We have done some work for Greystone in the area, in particular on 15 Campus Trail. And 15 Campus Trail is the property that is adjacent to 490 Muskoka Road 3. So 15 Campus Trail is adjacent to the subject property to the west. So that would be the property, the rear lot line. And so I was asked by the owners of 15 Campus Trail to review the application through the context of the Town of Huntsville's official plan, the district's official plan, of course, the provincial planning statement. And I've reviewed Mr. Gallagher's planning justification report and also the site plan presented or put forward with the application. I think just generally speaking, we have two concerns. I have two concerns. And this is coming from a person that facilitates these applications and often is representing the developer. So first of all, I have concern not with the use at all, but more with the number of exceptions that would be required in order to accommodate a density of 10 units on this property. So in my experience, typically when you see an application that requires 6 or 7 site-specific exceptions, that's indicative of a proposal that is too dense for the site. And it's my opinion that this application, this proposal, this site plan, this number of units is in fact too dense for the site. I have particular concern with the rear yard setback of 3 meters, whereas the CPP bylaw requires 7.5. That's a 60% reduction in the rear yard setback. And I think that's significant. And I think when we consider that setback of more than a 60% reduction concurrently with the other 5 or 6 exceptions being requested, that I'm convinced anyway that this project of 10 units is too much for this property. That's my professional opinion. So that was my first theme. My second theme is just that, having reviewed planning staff's report, and having not yet seen myself anyway, any form of civil engineering drawings. Although I do know Mr. Gallagher referenced some work that was prepared by Pinestone. We have not seen that. I don't know if the municipality has had an opportunity to review that or not, but we certainly haven't. So in the absence of any support from technical studies, it's impossible for me to conclude whether this application conforms with Huntsville's official plan policies or the district's official plan policies. We just don't know if this can actually physically be accommodated because the work hasn't been done yet. And so when I consider what has been asked of my clients on 15 Campus Trail for their proposed development, which has not appeared before your committee yet, we have prepared an environmental impact study, a stormwater management report, a functional servicing report, a tree preservation plan, a landscape plan, and of course, a planning justification report. But this application hasn't provided any of those things with the exception of a planning justification report. So I truly believe that a decision on this application, a favorable decision, would just not be appropriate and would also not be in keeping with the processes and expectations required of adjacent property owners. So I've talked long enough. I know you have a long agenda today, but I believe it's appropriate to deny this application as submitted. I think it's too dense. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks very much for that. All right. I'll ask if there's anyone else online that would like to speak to the application.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
All right. Thank you. Council members, comments or questions? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you, and I should say, Kevin, for a guy that maybe doesn't do that very often, you did great. You presented a lot of very valid concerns. And just to give you some peace of mind, I only met the developers of this property when I've told the story around the table a few times, but you haven't heard it, when I was on Shaw Crescent and they were looking to develop 24 units right out my front door, and started with a property that was a single family lot and turned it into 24. I was very upset, very worried. I rallied the neighbors. We had these meetings with beer and everything else and got all of us riled up. In the end, they were unbelievable to deal with. They listened, they adjusted their plans, and it ended up, now there's 16 units built there already with affordable units there. And the best thing is it's quiet neighbors. Like you don't see them. I moved from that property later on. It did not affect the impact of my value of my home. I sold it for exactly what I was hoping to get. And so just, who you're dealing with, you're just not going to have a big city landlord who's not going to listen to you, which is good. Your concerns are very valid, and they're the same concerns I had back in the day. I think a couple of comments, though, the fear about the rear yard setback, it has nothing to do with density. I mean, it's just so they can push it back, right? So it's 60% reduction, but it's not saying it's too dense for the lot. It's just saying they want to help out Kevin and make sure he's further away. And I do know to Kevin's concern earlier that it could be market rent and not affordable rent. That's why I'd like to see if we could do some kind of provisional approval with very strict conditions and have the staff work through all the concerns that neighbors have brought up and all the concerns about drainage and stormwater during the permit process. And the only reason I bring that up is if they don't get going on something like this soon, knowing at the district level, they could miss the boat on the MAHIP funding. If they miss the boat on the MAHIP funding, then we're looking at all market rent, and we're not going to have those 10 affordable units. And there's nothing this town needs more right now than 10 one-bedroom affordable units. So I don't know if I want to present a motion now or if we should have a discussion first and then bring it back, but that's just my thoughts.
Mayor Alcock first.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you for the presentation and all of the comments. I concur with Councillor Morrison, all valid for sure. I also agree, though, that this is affordable housing, and I do know that the applicant in this case has accessed the district's affordable housing program, and I have no doubt that that would be the same. I do have a couple of questions that were raised, comments raised by Josh on behalf of Greystone. So, Josh, you had said that, is he still with us? good. You had said.
Would you like him back?
If I could, just to ask.
All
this,
right.
Given.
Can we bring Josh back in?
That'd be great, because he made reference to the fact, unless he's gone. Josh?
I'm back, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Given your capacity, and you've said that you have in fact represented applicants who were building this kind of housing, and you said that you believe the density, it's too dense because of all of the exceptions. There are certain exceptions that are being requested. Our council has not had an issue with, such as reduction of parking spots. We've often done that, and it's always been a good decision. So I would think, given your role and your capacity as a planner, that you'd recognize that's not unusual. So that would sort of take that one off the table. But the comment you made, I understand, and because it was echoed here by others about the setback. Certainly the 1 meter setback was an issue that our staff had raised, and perhaps there's further work on that. But you said that it's too dense. And so my question is, what would be the correct density in your eyes?
Thank you, through Chairperson Stone to Mayor Alcock. That's a good question. I mean, in my experience, it's an iterative process. It's refinements of the site plan to reduce the number of provisions that are being requested. I agree with you. I have no concern whatsoever with the requested decrease in parking spaces. So I put that on record. I mean, I'm often the planner that's on the other side of these applications that's making the case for why I believe a reduced number of parking spaces is reasonable. I think it's a reasonable request. I think holistically, when I look at all of the requests being made here, the limited landscape buffers, for instance, the proximity of the parking lot to one of the, I think it's the interior side lot line, together with the significant reduction in the rear lot line, I think, to me, that tells me that this is the building footprint, at least, is too large for the property. That's just my opinion, and happy to answer any more questions that you have.
Okay, I do appreciate that. There is a proposal, if I understand it correctly, that there is a proposal currently for a 2 meter height in the fence that's being proposed, but I think it's 2 meters. But we've had a suggestion it could be taller than that in the height, right? So that was something that certainly our staff can work with. And then the side yard setback, I think, is going from the proposed, it's going to 6 meters as opposed to 6.
Kelsey?
So it's a healthy, what's left is a healthy size for the side yard as to the exception, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is compliant. The side yard setbacks are compliant. And what's being reduced is the landscape buffers. So it's kind of in the different areas. It's kind of on the north property line. There's there's other landscape buffers, but there's that one point of constraint.
Right.
They've added in the new site plan, there's going to be a retaining wall. That's why I didn't put it at a lower rate, because I don't think you could fit landscaping in there.
Okay.
But again, could work with the applicant to figure out if they could put landscaping in there.
So I guess as a general comment, what I'm hearing is there still is some room here for some discussion around a couple of the buffers, but there is generally some compliance that's very important. And from the original application, as I understand it, the reason why on the backyard it's only 3 meters is because we're setting the entire building back further away from Mr. Wilson's house. So I think there, as I understand it, there was an attempt to listen to the concerns raised by Mr. Wilson. Is that my understanding, Kelsey? Is that correct?
Yes, the applicant had discussed the proposal with Mr. Wilson prior, and so that, I think, was part of what informed the positioning of the house or the multiple dwelling.
Okay. And then the other last comment is around the functional servicing and some of those issues. We don't have the information. This is why, Josh, you had suggested that we deny it. Today, it's actually for our information only. And I think that seemed right to me because we're still lacking a little bit of information. And I know that from a district perspective to the funding application, they can still proceed with applying funding to projects that are still in the approvals process. They can do that. So those are my general comments.
Thank you. Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Morrison over there. What he said, it's all on board. A couple things I think that can be dealt with quite easily by the developer is the fence height on Mr. Wilson's side. And on the north side, I'm sure we can come to an agreement with Stinson for put a new fence there. Make sure that the building is not, her building is not accessible, like she said, for people to get onto or whatever. I'm sure that can be dealt with. And as far as what she's talking about the water runoff, right now it's proposed gravel. I'd like to see maybe a recycle asphalt in there just to keep the dust down in the future. And that will also help with any water runoff coming at that it's coming down the driveway or whatever. This developer is a huge proponent of affordable housing, has been since I've came into this chair, and everything that I've seen so far been asked of them they have done. They on Goldie Street, when they did that, that was a big one. We had approximately 40 or 50 people in here. I have not heard a complaint since after we have approved that from any neighbors or anything. So I just I'm behind this development, and as far as size, I think it fits in there. We don't need all that parking, so I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I know, I'm looking at the drawings, and Kelsey, if you can, you had some drawings that we don't have in our package of heights and kind of a mock-up.
Of the elevations?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Elevations. I don't think they were true elevation pictures, but can you pull that up for me just so I can have a look? What's interesting to me is there's only one spot that has a 1 meter buffer, vegetative buffer zone. It doesn't look like a very large one. This could be a three bedroom building, and they wouldn't be here other than a few minor variances of setbacks, and they would meet all other requirements. So, and that could still be the case if they want to go back to the drawing board, but we don't need 3 or 4 3-bedroom apartments. We need single units. So I think justification is there. The height is the height, and you know, we have to accept the fact that things are changing, and abutting landowners, really, you don't know what's going to end up beside you. You know, it can happen at any point in time, and it's one of those things. So I'm more along with Councillor Morrison that I don't think there's any issues that would allow us to move this forward, and I'm happy to support it.
I don't see other hands right now. Before I go back to you, Councillor Morrison, I'd just like to say that I think that it's important that we support staff who are saying that they don't have all the information. The stormwater, the runoff, where's that going? How is that going? I think there's still some tweaking to be done. I think this being brought for information is appropriate at this stage, especially knowing that they can still move forward with the MAHIP program at the district. And that's, I really want to help them do more affordable housing and make sure they get the MAHIP funding. But for me, this is an appropriate step, and perhaps we'll see it next month before us. But for now, I think it should be for information only. But with that, I will ask Councillor Morrison, did you want to put anything on the floor or not?
Yeah, I think I would. And maybe I can ask John, as far as, and maybe Mayor Alcock is, I've been led to believe that if you have provisional approval, conditional approval, it puts you up the chain as far as the applications. They only have limited numbers of MAHIP funding they'll contribute. And I've been led to believe that if you have a provisional application, you're thought of more handily. So, yeah. And John, maybe? Go John.
All right, I'm going to let Mayor Alcock, who chairs planning at the district.
Certainly it's a helpful thing for sure. I just know that in the 2024 allocations, there was approval for 8 units in Huntsville for a project that still has not been approved by our council. So in that case, the proposal I think was a good proposal, but that's the townhouse proposal on Yonge Street. And it received an allocation of 8 units. So and having been chairing that table, I know there are other projects that are approved. They don't all have to, clearly, they don't all have to be signed off and ready to go. It's helpful. I'm not going to deny that. If I said it has nothing to do with it, it certainly, but I would also say, given this applicant who has a tremendous track record of utilizing this program, that is also one of the factors. One of the criteria is the track record of the applicant. So that sits right up there as a high priority.
Kelsey, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for the MAHIP program, there's the evaluation scoring criteria, and it doesn't specifically state planning approvals. It talks about timeline. And then there's all the other factors in terms of compatibility with district goals and objectives, project details and locations. So there are other factors. So like the mayor was saying, there are projects that have been approved that haven't had planning approvals. It's just based on the weighting of the
John, quickly.
Yeah, just in response to both those comments, again, it's always better when the property is zoned and ready to go. There was nothing previously where we had an application to zone for multiple, and then we came back with a site plan approval that showed the stormwater, et cetera. I will say that our engineers had lots of difficulty with the district engineering trying to get just the as-built drawings so that they could finish this report. We had our pre-con with staff very quickly, and now we were held up because of not being able to get that report or those drawings from the district. But it's always better to be ready. The last thing I just want to say is, and again, this is more from Burnell Road Management point, they're working and finishing up that building on Gouldy Street. They have several employees that they want to keep working in the springtime, and this would be the other part of that reason. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Morrison.
I'll just follow up after those answers. So yeah, I get it. I agree with you, Councillor Stone. We need to support our staff, and I think we can still do what I'm hoping to do here and still support the staff. The staff are doing exactly what they should be doing, which is being prudent, making sure they have everything they need to even consider approvals. But we also have a duty to get affordable housing built ASAP. And I think even if what we're doing gives a 5% improvement to their application to get the MAHIP funding, I mean, we all preach affordable housing all the time. I'd like to see it, and there's still tons of work to do. Right, the applicant and the staff, and they work well together. Our town staff and the applicant work well together. They're going to do a ton of work. The drainage and stormwater and all that stuff will be most likely improved from what's currently on the lot. That's all coming. But I'd really like to see some kind of conditional approval so if we can give them a tiny leg up and getting that MAHIP funding, I'd rather see it in Huntsville than Bracebridge. So, my thought.
Mayor Alcock.
I certainly thank you for letting me follow up. I can support that given the wording in the next steps. And the wording is follow up on the functional servicing report, but also issues raised in this report and by the public are addressed. So I think that is really important so that people who did come today feel like we are going to try and work with them to figure that out. So if we use that kind of wording in your motion, whatever it is going forward, I think I could get my head around that because it's what you wrote, Kelsey. So
I'm just going to go to Kelsey first and then,
I just wanted to first clarify that as it's an amendment, it wouldn't be a provisional approval, it would be a full approval, but it would be an exception that we would add for those items. So it's a bit different than a class 3 CPP where it would be a provisional approval, just to clarify.
okay, thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Chair Stone. I know we're talking a lot about the MAHIP funding. We're not the only people trying to utilize those resources. The rest of the municipalities and townships are using that in the district. So time is of the essence for this affordable housing and the funding that comes along with it. So I would support Councillor Morrison's motion.
All right. The one thing that comes to my mind is the setback. That won't be dealt with in any way. Do we have concerns with the setback, the rear yard setback? If we provisionally approve this? Councillor Redwick.
If I may, Chair Stone, are you talking about the setback that's the 3-meter setback on the north side between Campus Trail? Okay, I thought we dealt with that. I thought that around the table that was something that we approved. I'm guessing that you're not in favor of that.
I'm just
question.
asking the question.
Okay.
Yeah,
Councillor Morrison.
I think Josh's concern about that is how it would affect drainage possibilities and everything else. And I think the drainage plan, stormwater management plan would have to be approved by our staff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if it can't be approved, can't be met, then we'd have some provisions. But I don't have a problem with a 3-meter setback back there because it allows us to be as far away from Kevin's property as possible. So my own just one thought is that I am okay with that setback of where it is.
All right. Then I'll ask if there's a motion to amend or
Yes,
substitute.
I'd like to propose a motion to amend. I think Trish might have some wording ready to go. Put it on the screen. And I'm okay with modifying to have some of the words Mayor Alcock was considering.
And you'll have a seconder? Councillor Fitzgerald? All right, I'll read this and then we can talk about it. So moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 35-2024 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from an urban residential low precinct to an urban residential high with exception X precinct 2. Permit a 10-unit, 2-story multi-dwelling building. Reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3 meters for a multiple dwelling building. Reduce the minimum required number of parking spaces from 15 spaces to 12 spaces. Reduce the required aisle width for a double traffic lane from 6.7 meters to 6 meters. Permit a parking area associated with a multiple dwelling within 1 meter of a lot line abutting an urban residential low precinct. Reduce the width of the required landscape buffer not abutting a street along the northern property line from 1.5 meters to 0 meters. Reduce the width of the required landscape buffer not abutting a street along an easterly property line from 1.5 meters to 1 meter. Require a community planning permit to be issued prior to the development proceeding on the lot. And require that the community plan permit shall not be issued unless the Director of Development Services is satisfied that the following matters have been addressed in addition to all other applicable requirements of the community planning permit bylaw. A functional service report is submitted to the satisfaction of the Town of Huntsville and the District of Muskoka. A stormwater management and construction mitigation plan is submitted to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville and the District of Muskoka. A landscaping plan is submitted to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. Written confirmation is provided from the District of Muskoka to demonstrate that a commercial entrance permit can be issued to access onto District Road. And a connection permit has been obtained by the District of Muskoka prior to the connection to municipal services, or written confirmation is provided to the District of Muskoka to demonstrate that a connection permit can be issued to authorization connection to municipal services. All right. Comments or questions about this motion? Mayor Alcock.
Just in the list, the landscaping plan, that would include the height of the fence. Would that include that, Kelsey?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, usually landscaping plans do show the fencing. And then like looking at the landscape buffers and
Right.
like when we talked about stratum deer wintering habitat,
Right.
where we can preserve vegetation around the perimeter and in front of the dwelling. That's what we wanted to capture with that.
That's great. And if I may just follow up on that. So if we have to remove a couple of substantial trees, the landscaping plan will show how we can revegetate in areas that might deal with privacy.
Yes, we would hope that there would be enhanced vegetation along the property lines, but maybe
Director
Director
Maxwell.
Maxwell has a
No,
point.
thank you, Chair Stone. I think that the other aspect that had been discussed around the table was the height of the fence.
Yes.
And that if the fence is to be a 2-meter height, then we should probably include that, just so that it's not something that gets overlooked in the future.
So in fact, the height of the fence is not necessarily included in the landscape. It has to be. But then if we include it, it might be higher if given some of the discussion. So if we're saying that's the difficulty about including it today, because there was to be further follow-up on that.
Just a quick thing. I believe our CPP bylaw has a maximum height for fences, so that would be, I think it's 2.3 meters. But I don't have the bylaw in front of me.
It's 2.3 meters?
I think so, but
Okay.
Richard might be able to
Maybe
fact
that's-
check me.
Maybe 2.3 meters, because that would be close to 10.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments or questions? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Councillor Clark declared a pecuniary interest. All right, that carries. Thank you very much. Yep. All right. We're moving on. Kelsey's going to speak to the O'Neill McIntyre application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 170 Sharon Drive. The property is within the waterfront designation in the official plan and within the waterfront residential 120 precinct with natural constraint 1 and 2 overlays. The applicant is proposing to construct a 60 square meter dwelling addition to a legal non-complying building, which includes a 7 square meter porch, 15 square meter enclosed deck, and 7 square meter stairway. The amendment proposes to change the precinct from waterfront residential 120 meters to waterfront residential 120 meters with exception. The purpose of the exception is to permit development within 30 meters of an at-capacity lake trout lake, permit development within stratum 1 deer wintering habitat, and permit a reduction for the setback of the enclosed deck addition from the front yard, eastern side yard setback, type 1 fish habitat, and cold water course, as well as this similar exceptions for the dwelling addition and porch addition. So you can kind of see the additions. Sorry, it's hard to see. Let's see if I remember to zoom. There's an addition out in the front and addition at the back of the dwelling. Here's just a rendering of what the additions will look like. There's also there's also a recommendation to require a consent application be completed to ensure the subject lands are separately conveyable, as it appears they may have merged inadvertently with the abutting land. So that's also included in the approval. The lands are currently developed with a legal, non-complying single detached dwelling. Non-complying buildings are bound to their existing footprint, size, and height, unless otherwise permitted. The addition will increase the footprint, therefore relief is needed. The building will be developed to maintain the existing building lines and build over existing decks. So there's minimal further encroachment into the required setbacks. The additions are modest and informed by the siting of the existing dwelling. Further encroachment of the stairway is needed as 1.5 meter encroachment is allowed into the front yard setback, which will allow for more functional access to the dwelling. The placement of the additions are informed by the topography of the property and situated on a flat portion of the lands. In support of this application, EIS, an environmental impact study, was provided by Riverstone Environmental, which reviewed the Stratum 1 deer wintering habitat on the property. Based on the existing conditions of the property, the report concluded that it's not likely to provide critical or even valuable thermal cover for deer. Therefore, this is not of a concern, and the additions will also be in already cleared areas. To address the lesser setbacks from fish habitat into the cold water watercourse, the EIS also reviewed aquatic features and habitat. The report evaluated most of the shoreline as type 2 fish habitat and type 1 fish habitat at the outlet of the watercourse. The existing development is not in its non-complying location, encroaches into these required setbacks. Although the proposal will increase the footprint of development within these setbacks, the report concluded potential impacts of the development are expected to be minimal, with appropriate construction mitigation measures and shoreline revegetation as outlined in the EIS. Requirements to implement these measures would be addressed through the issuance of the CPP, should council view this application favorably. Harp Lake is verified by the province as an at capacity lake trout lake, which can't sustain further development. New development on existing vacant lands will only be permitted within outside of the 30-meter shoreline setback and shoreline buffer. The policies further discuss the requirements for sewage disposal, requiring new leaching beds be set back a minimum of 300 meters so they do not leach into the lake. In this instance, the addition is constrained by the existing location of septic and the non-compliant dwelling location. The dwelling is also within the shoreline buffer, so the shoreline buffer can't feasibly be 30 meters in depth. To address the policies for the at capacity lake trout lake, Riverstone recommended the 30-meter shoreline buffer and watercourse buffer be naturalized to the greatest extent possible to achieve a net benefit. The septic system is proposed to also be replaced with a tertiary system, which will improve or maintain the phosphorus that's entering into the lake. The application was circulated internally and in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the CPP bylaw, as well as to the Harp Lake Association. No objections were received, and there was no opposition from district staff as well. Through the review and analysis of the application, it would appear that the application would conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Calling the applicant. Oh, John's back. How you doing?
This will be the last time you see me today. How's that?
Today.
Thank you. John P. Gallagher here on behalf of Ian and Kelly McIntyre, who are watching along online. I think Kelsey has provided a very good synopsis of the application, and just want to highlight a few items with regards to to it. As Kelsey had stated, it is a legal non-conforming structure, and although it may look like a lot of exceptions there, we're basically taking advantage of the existing footprint of the buildings and decks and building over those areas. There is additions to the rear of the building, which is furthest away from the lake. And as you can see by the photographs, it is a real cottage. There's not a plan to modernize it. They have a growing family. Mom and Kelly's parents have the cottage next door. As Kelsey had stated, there was some question about the conveyancing. John Dooley, their solicitor, is reviewing that currently to see if there's a quick fix for it. It may be just a matter of having the registrar do a correction title. It appears that there might have been some poor conveyancing previously when her mom originally bought this lot before conveying it to Kelly and Ian. The property has gone through numerous conveyances. It's been taxed as a separate property, and dutifully taxes have been paid on the property. The application, when looking at the official plan and zoning bylaw, we did have to provide our fisheries assessment because of the water quality on Harp Lake. And I think it should be noted that, three main items there. Number one, we have received approval for a new septic system far back from the water. Number two, in Mr. Shaw's environmental impact, he has provided an area for revegetation on the subject lands. And I've made my client aware of that, and they didn't have any objection to it. And thirdly, the scale of the additions are minor. The area around Harp Lake was developed as a cottage development. Over time, there have been many conversions to year-round use. The lots around the lake are relatively small, and even in this situation, we're still relatively low in our coverage on the lot. It is accessed by a year-round municipal road. It is linear shoreline development. Because we're utilizing areas around the existing dwelling, limited site alteration and disturbance will occur. The lands to the south comprise a very significant hillside there. And recently they had to remove one tree that was posing a danger to basically destroying the whole cottage. The width of the building is only around 9 meters on a 38-meter frontage lot, so the scale of it proportionally and being tucked in the corner is very minimal. It's appropriate to locate additions to legal non-compliant structures in close proximity to the dwelling to avoid additional site alteration. There are policies in the official plan that speak to servicing. In this regard, brand new septic system is being installed with the additions, which again, I think we've seen the benefits of both the revegetation and the installation of new septic systems around Harp Lake from 20 years ago as to the water quality of that lake. With regards to the merged lots, the lawyer has provided evidence of the issue, and he's continuing to work to resolve that issue, whether it be title correction, part law control, or consent. The application is conforming with the district official plan. The district provided a letter of support in that regard. It meets the intent of the provincial policy statement by protecting those sensitive areas and allowing for development. The additions will be built to the current code under the OBC, and it does support employment through hiring of local contractors. It's my professional opinion that the applications conform to both the district and the town official plan. consistent with the provincial policy statements and represent good planning. I'd be glad to answer any questions, should you have any.
Excellent. Thank
Still
you.
got 4 minutes. Do you want me to keep
I
going?
know, I know. Would anyone present like to speak to this application? Or anyone online would need to raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you. Council members, comments or questions? Councillor Cloutier.
Just a comment, Chair. I'm glad to see that they're putting a new septic system in with the growth of the building. It's nice to see that that was a forefront right up at front and they didn't have to be told to do that. Kudos to them.
All right. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 32-2024-HTE, changing the precinct on the lands from a waterfront residential 120-meter precinct to a waterfront residential 120-meter with exception X precinct 2. And I'm not going to read all these. They were in your package. They're on the screen. Any comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries. All right, Madeline, you're speaking to the Shaver application.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alrighty. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 2725 Muskoka Road 10. The lot is designated rural in the official plan and is under the rural precinct with a flood zone and natural constraints 1 and 2 overlay in the community planning permit bylaw. An amendment was submitted to change the precinct on the lands from rural to rural residential and from rural to rural with exception to permit a decrease in the minimum required frontage for a lot fronting onto a Class A district road from 150 meters to 115 meters. Additionally, a concurrent consent application was submitted for the creation of one new rural residential lot. The proposed severed lot, shown outlined in red, is currently vacant and is proposed to have an area of approximately 2 hectares with 150 meters of frontage on Muskoka Road 10, whereas the proposed retained lot would contain the existing single detached dwelling and is proposed to have an area of approximately 40 hectares with 115 meters of frontage along Muskoka Road 10. New lots within the rural precinct are required to have a minimum frontage of 150 meters when fronting on an arterial road, and this is an increase from the average rural lot frontage requirement of 134 meters. And this 150 meter frontage is also required for any rural residential precinct as well. Both the severed and retained lots would meet the minimum area requirements of their respective precincts. However, with the creation of the severed lot, the frontage for the retained lot would be deficient. Natural constraints have been identified on the proposed severed lot as steep slopes. Other natural constraints such as wetlands, a cold water stream, flood-prone lands, and other areas of sloping are all contained on the retained lands. Where slopes exist on a property, the official plan outlines principles that will be implemented for development to ensure erosion or potential hazards are avoided. Natural heritage is protected and that lots will have sufficient frontage and area to accommodate any development proposed. In this instance, the degree of slope on the proposed severed lot has not been determined. However, it does appear that there are sloping constraints specifically along Muskoka Road 10, limiting the location of a potential entrance onto the proposed severed lot. Details on the location and design of an entrance and driveway have not been provided, and the feasibility of development on the proposed severed lot has not been identified. Additionally, the official plan speaks to transportation and states that when considering development that abuts a district of Muskoka Road, the proposed development will satisfy all policies and requirements and shall only be permitted where the applicable approvals and permits have been obtained. In this instance, district staff provided comments included in the report package which state that the application should be denied due to the deficient frontage. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. One letter of objection was received, which discusses limited visibility along Muskoka Road 10, the applicants not demonstrating a building envelope, and natural constraints not being addressed. The letter was circulated to council prior to the meeting. And through staff's review and analysis, the applications do not appear to meet the intent of the official plan, nor be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and as such, staff are recommending denial. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative. Good afternoon, Savas.
Savas Veratis, Plant Muskoka, P.O. Box 5384, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2K7. I have a presentation to share with you, so I was going to jump right into that. Perfect. So, as you've heard from staff, they have concerns with this application. I don't really share the same concerns that they have. I think there's enough justification for the deficiency in the frontage on this matter, and we'll discuss that as I go through my presentation here. So, as you heard, this is the proposals for a 1 new rural residential lot. In creating that lot, doing the split frontage that exists on the property, we fall with a retained lot deficiency, which is 115 meters of frontage, where the CPP bylaw for local roads would normally require 134 meters of frontage. But it, being that it's on a Class A district road, it's 150 meters, so we're deficient by a little bit there with the 115. So looking at the layout of the property, you can see that. Am I able to point with this? Okay. So you can see with the severed lot is located on the one side of the property, and the way the Muskoka Road 10 is laid out, it sort of deviates up to the north and it comes back and it touches the other side of the property where the retained lot is over in this spot. So we have two split frontages here. Severed lot conforms. 150 meters of exact frontage there on that spot, and a lot area works as well. But the 115 on this side is where the deficiency occurs. So looking a little bit closer there, one thing that jumped out to me when I was working on this application is there is an unopened road allowance that runs through this property. It actually splits it, so this property right up here is privately owned lands that are not owned by the applicant, owned by a third party. So there's this open road allowance through there. And while the frontage is not measured this way in the zoning bylaw or in the CPP bylaw, what you end up with is this area of public land between Muskoka Road 10 and the subject lands that the bylaw would not treat that as road frontage. But if you actually measured it through there, that actually ends up with 135 meters of frontage. And for all intents and purposes, this is what you'll intendly see as the frontage of this property as you drive down Muskoka Road. So that is one sort of point that stuck out to me. Unfortunately, though, you'd have to purchase the entire road allowance in order to add a small piece of road allowance, which was recommended by district staff and town staff as something we should be looking at doing. And the applicants considered it. At the end of the day, it doesn't physically change anything in the property to purchase that, and also going through the process of purchasing a whole road allowance just to add a little bit of frontage onto the property, which would still be deficient of 150 meters, just didn't seem worth it. And to be honest with you, you also have to consider the neighbor to the north. They probably would want their half as well too, so you only end up with about half of that. Looking at it from, zoom back out again, one thing I should note that is that there is an existing entrance on the retained lands, right in that location, and it leads to a house that's under construction. So by severing this lot, there's no functional relation between this part of the property and this part of the property. These two frontages function independently of each other, and they'll continue to do so if this application were to be approved. So you're left with one property here, an existing property here along this frontage, and then third with the severed lot. If the applicants were able to purchase this, for instance, and add it to their property, you'd be left with a reconfigured second lot and a reconfigured retain lot, and you still have 1, 2, 3 lots. So the deficiency in frontage on the retain lot doesn't artificially increase or cause like a artificial and density increase on the property. It's not like we're gaining a lot by asking for this deficiency. It's simply just recognizing an existing situation. When you look at Class A roadways in the Muskoka official plan, they are described as typically having a minimum speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour. They connect development centers, are generators of substantial traffic, are generally located in the rural area, the waterfront area, and are constructed to standards which would preserve the primary road function and efficient movement of traffic. And it does say that all new lots on a Class A roadway shall generally have a minimum lot frontage of 150 meters. So the district official plan does allow some flexibility in there. There's no flexibility being awarded to this in the comments, but one thing to note is that the speed limit of this road actually is 60 kilometers per hour. So it doesn't meet the typical minimum of 80. That's a Class A roadway. But you look at Class B, it says have a speed limit of less than 80 kilometers per hour, are intended to provide equally for the safe, efficient movement of traffic and the provision of access to abutting lands, which feels a lot like that area. We're not connecting two development centers with that roadway. It's more that if you look at the area, there's a lot of driveways coming off of that lane, off of that roadway, and there's a lot of lots in and around that area. This sort of keeps that character that is being proposed here today. And at the bottom there, you can see that Class B roadways shall generally have a minimum frontage of 135 meters. So looking back at my little diagram that showed the 135, it would be very much close to what a Class B roadway would be, and it's what kind of feels a Class B roadway. But we're not asking to redesignate this. I know that's a different process altogether. But one thing that I should note is that there's exemption criteria as well after these two things. And it does say where development adjacent to a district road is proposed and would not satisfy policies in this section, consideration may be given to the following situations: where there's an existing split frontage and neither frontage is further reduced, which is precisely what's happening here, and where there's a terrain feature that physically separates the proposed lots. And the reason why that deviation occurs is there's a height of land right there. So in fact, if it went straight through it, this applicant would have all that frontage to work with, and that lot would be able to be provided for 150 meters. So in conclusion, I think we're creating one new lot on a really underutilized parcel of rural land. It's over 100 acres in size. They both, to me, appear to be in character with the surrounding area. The deficiency wouldn't cause an increase in density beyond normal permissions. The existing frontage of the retained lot is not impacted by the severance. The roadway appears to meet the description of a Class B roadway, but rather a Class A road, but rather it is a Class A roadway, but still generally, in my opinion, meets the minimum frontage requirements of either. And it's my professional opinion that the proposal meets the intent and is in conformity with the district official plan and town Huntsville official plan and represents good planning. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Would anyone present wish to make any comments about the application? He's playing on his phone. Would anyone online like to make any comments?
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you. Councillor Cloutier.
Thank you, Chair. As there was something that said earlier before, and when I got this job, every planning application is different and you have to see it, look at it with different eyes all the time. With this here, if you look at the pictures, as it was said to us, I mean, the rock cut is there. That's why the road goes around. I don't know how the other third party ever owned that chunk of land, but if we don't do anything with this, the existing driveway on the new house is still just going to use that part, that 135 meters. That's not going to change no matter what happens. This way here, we get a nice severed lot, country lot, or rural lot for somebody to build a house on that doesn't want to live in town. It's got good sides, it's got good frontage, it's got good visibility. I fully support this by on means of forever. It's, I mean, the other land that's on the rock cut, it's what can you do with it, right? And it's not going to be done. And they put up some crazier driveways along that road if you drive down it than what's there now.
Councillor Renwick?
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you for the presentation. I would absolutely have to agree with Councillor Cloutier that in two respects, the fact that every application that we get before us, and the more we do, the more you realize that you really have to delve into each one and really look at the individual components of it. This makes sense to me. Well, it doesn't make sense to deny it. It makes sense to approve it for the reasons that Councillor Cloutier just said too. You're creating a separate lot that can be used, and that little portion of land, you're correct. I mean, they could buy it, but to what end? So I would approve, or I would motion to not deny, but to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Alcock?
Thank you, Chair Stone. And I don't need to go on because I totally agree with both Councillors Cloutier and Renwick. And I do appreciate your report, Madeline, for sure. I also appreciate your report, Savas, that I had underlined the district letter saying shall generally, and then the fact that you actually delved a bit deeper and they have the exception, which it's there it is, right, for exactly that. So I would support the approval of this application.
Councillor Morrison?
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, I fully support it as well, but I completely support staff's take on this because we haven't done our rural development research yet, so we're not there yet. But I like that it's a nice lot, assessment growth on an existing road, no new roads to be plowed. But Savas, I want to ask you, and this is just about, I've never seen the shape of a 100-acre lot like that. And Madeline, like the grid pattern is this, and then it goes like this. Not that it affects the application, but I'm just curious. Any idea why?
Through you, I think there's just a little stream or something, or like a low drainage course on that western side, and for some reason, this lot's western boundary just tended to follow that. It is weird. Normally, they're laid out in a grid, no matter what the natural features are.
Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Chair. I agree with the comments I've heard around the table. The retained lot and residence is going to be 96 acres with 377 feet of frontage, so it's a large retained lot. When you look at that sketch, there's a lot of frontage that doesn't touch Muskoka Road 10, but it certainly has the appearance of a large frontage when you look at the sketch. And because of this, I think it's important to note that I don't think this lot could ever be severed again unless there was the road allowance was purchased. So we're looking at a one-time thing here, and I don't think it's unreasonable to support this application.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Chair Stone. And pulled this up. The property belongs to the neighbor across the street, lot 2802. So it was an original 100-acre parcel, chain, and it's the weirdest thing ever. I fully appreciate staff's report, and Savas made a very good case here, which I think I could support.
All right. I'm going to read the original motion. Moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that Planning Council deny Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 33, 2024 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential precinct, and from a rural precinct to a rural with exception precinct to permit a decrease in the minimum required frontage for a lot fronting onto a Class A district road from 150 meters to 115 meters. And with that, so that was the original motion. I have an amendment. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that the following word deny be struck out and the word approve be inserted in its place. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that carries. B. Oh, and the main motion as amended. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. All right. With that, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and I'm going to ask Mayor Alcock to do the rest of the meeting. Would you? Yes. Thanks. 5 minutes.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the continuation of our Planning Council meeting. And with that, I am going to close out the public portion. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. We will now move to the non-public portion of the meeting, which is our reports from municipal officers. And just as a note or reminder, if the applicant or their agent wishes to make comments regarding their application, they may do so after the staff presentation. So we're going to start with CPP 153 2024 HT 232 806 2 Ontario Inc. 105 Plowright Lane. Madeline, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as mentioned, the subject property is located at 105 Plowright Lane. The lot is designated waterfront in Huntsville's official plan and is under the waterfront residential 120 meter precinct in the community planning permit bylaw. So an application for a Class 3 community planning permit was provisionally approved by Planning Council in October 2023 for this intended development, and a final permit was issued to the applicants in October of this year once they had satisfied all the conditions of provisional approval. So upon construction, a survey determined that the front yard setback for the proposed addition was closer to the shoreline than originally approved. Therefore, the purpose of this application is to correct this error and permit the construction of the 50 square meter addition and 9.575 square meter attached porch in the proper location. Previously authorized variations associated with the previous application must be reapproved through this current application to permit the proposed development to proceed. And the variations and conditions of a community planning permit have been listed on screen and within the report package. The proposed addition and porch have been designed to be modest in scale, fit appropriately based on the surrounding area and the lot, and contribute to the functionality of the existing dwelling and property. So as you can see on the screen, the property is under construction currently, and there's just some elevation drawings there to help visualize what the proposed addition and porch would look like. Natural constraints have been identified as type 2 fish habitat, and Lake Wasiosa being a cold water lake. The required 20 and 30 meter setbacks for these features will not be maintained by the proposal due to the non-complying nature of the dwelling. However, naturalization of the shoreline buffer and up until the 30 meter setback were identified in minimizing impacts. Additionally, Riverstone completed an environmental impact assessment, which addressed impacts of the proposed development in relation to water quality. Mitigation measures and proper construction practices outlined in the report have been included as the property has undergone construction and will continue to be carried forward as they were included in the initial approval. The application was circulated in accordance with the community planning permit bylaw. And through staff's review and analysis, the application appears to meet the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. And as such, staff are recommending the application be approved subject to the condition of approval, provisional approval, and final approval as outlined in the recommendation in the report package. And thanks for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Madeline. Is the applicant or their representative, are they here? Are they virtually? Yes. Yes, so we're going to. Maya's got them. Yes. Okay, I think we're welcoming somebody.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can certainly hear you, but we can't see you at this point. We can see Dion. Hi, Dion. Sorry, Councillor Schumacher. Okay, that's all right. We can hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Brianna Allen of Sustainably Drafted. I am located at Unit 2, 1107 Muskoka Beach Road in Gravenhurst. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the drive today due to the weather turning poor. I do not have anything to add to Madeline's presentation. She did a great job representing what had happened from the previous CPP. And I am here if you have any additional questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's great. Thanks, Brianna, for being here, just in case there are. So I do have the motion. It's a very long one, so does committee give me the approval to waive the reading of this? It is exactly as it was in our agenda package that was posted online. So are there any questions from committee with respect to this recommendation? Okay, then I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries all the way around. Thank you very much for joining us, Brianna. That was approved.
Thank you.
And thank you for that, Madeline. All right, so we are moving along to the next item, CPP 158 2024 HC, Janowski 54 Florence Street. Over to you, Madeline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 54 Florence Street West, and the lot is designated residential within Huntsville's urban settlement area in the Huntsville's official plan, and is under the urban residential low precinct in the community planning permit bylaw. The application has been submitted to recognize the construction of a 5 square meter covered entrance attached to the existing 117 square meter duplex dwelling. Construction on the property began in September 2022 for the duplex. Upon building inspections, it was noted that the side covered entrance was added and built closer to the property line than the required setback, which led to this application. So therefore, a Class 3 community planning permit is required to reduce the interior side yard setback from 1.5 meters to 0 meters. And this would be condition of provisional approval would be that final approved plans are submitted showing water runoff collected from the roof drains being directed away from the property line. So interior side yard setbacks are required to ensure adequate distancing between development on abutting lots, allow access and drainage, and create a buffer between properties and around development on a lot. The existing dwelling has been constructed 1.6 meters away from the east interior side lot line, and the covered entrance has been added within this area approximately 0.5 meters from the eastern interior property line. The covered entrance currently includes eaves troughs that discharge the collected water runoff from the roof across the property line. And the proposed covered entrance is functional for the dwelling as it provides shelter from rain and snow over an entrance to one of the duplex units. A reconfiguration of these eaves troughs would allow water collected from the roof to be appropriately drained within the limits of the subject property. And snow storage was also considered. However, with the design of the covered entrance, any snow melting or falling from the roof would not be directed over the property line. So due to its small size and height on the dwelling, the covered entrance does not impede the function of the yard on both the subject lands and the neighboring property. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the community planning permit bylaw. And through staff's review and analysis, the application appears to meet the intent of the residential designation in the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. As such, staff are recommending the application be approved subject to the condition of provisional approval and final approval as outlined in the recommendation in the report. And thanks for listening, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you once again, Madeline. Is the applicant here or the applicant's representative?
Possibly online.
Online? Maya?
I see one hand raised and I'll bring them in.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Maya.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi,
Welcome.
welcome. Nice to see you guys, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the meeting, but due to weather condition, that's the problem. How can I help you?
Oh, yeah, it's okay. You know what? We're actually, this is just one of those moments. Our staff have reviewed the report with reference to your application. So you don't have to do anything. It's just you have the opportunity if you wanted to add a few words. But the fact you're here is great. And just in case councillors have a question. So you can hang back and wait and see if council has a question with respect to your application. Okay?
Sure, so you have a great day, guys.
Okay.
All the best. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Okay. All right. So I do have a motion. It's not as long as the other one, but it is lengthy. So it has been moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Morrison, and it is with respect to this application. If you approve me waiving the reading of it, that would be great because it is exactly as it was in our agenda package. Do I see nods around? Yes, I do. Isn't that great? Are there any questions with respect to this application? I don't see any, so I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries all the way around. Thank you for that. Okay, so with that, we are moving to our third item, CPP 156 2024 HT, Florence Holding Company Limited, for Horizon Lane. And back to you, Madeline.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, the subject property is located at 4 Horizon Lane. The lot is designated urban mixed use within Huntsville's urban settlement area in the official plan and is under the urban mixed use precinct in the community planning permit bylaw. An application has been submitted to recognize an existing 25.6 square meter gazebo and permit the construction of 3 detached carports, being 113.3 square meters, 149.2 square meters, and 95.4 square meters in size, and a 10.4 square meter deck addition attached to an existing detached garage with second-story residential dwelling unit. The Class 3 community planning permit is required to reduce the interior side yard setback, and I won't read all of them, but for the carport specifically, from 6 meters to 3.8 meters, 6 meters to 4.54 meters, and 6 meters to 3.39 meters. Reduce the interior side yard setback for the attached deck from 6 meters to 0.85 meters, and permit an increase in the maximum number of accessory buildings on a lot from 1 to 5. Conditions of provisional approval as listed in the report would include the site plan drawing being updated to include a 2-meter wide vegetated buffer adjacent to each of the carports and a 1.5 meter wide vegetated buffer adjacent to the detached garage. A satisfactory planting plan to address slope revegetation being provided. Confirmation that the exterior lighting is compliant and does not trespass over the property line, and the owner entering into an amending agreement with the town. So the property has been developed with 2 16-unit buildings, a detached garage with second-story residential unit, gazebo, and 3 carports that are under construction. An application for a minor variance was approved by the Committee of Adjustment in September 2022, which allowed a reduction to the eastern interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 3.2 meters for the detached garage, and a reduction from 6 meters to 3.8 meters for 2 144 square meter carport structures only. As part of the application, the reduced setback was permitted with a condition that a 2-meter wide vegetated buffer would be planted along that eastern side lot line. And to authorize the proposed development, a Class 1 community planning permit was approved in December 2023. Since that point, the detached garage with second-story residential dwelling unit has been constructed. and a gazebo was placed on the property between the two buildings. However, this was done so without benefit of planning or building approvals. After further review of the lot layout, it was determined by the applicants that the original carport design would not be feasible, and the proposal was revised to separate them into 3 structures, with one of the carports including a refuse disposal area and maintenance storage area. The interior side yard setback when an urban mixed-use property abuts a residential property is 6 meters. This is to ensure increased distancing, privacy, access, drainage, and room for a sufficient buffer. Further, a maximum of 1 accessory roofed structure is permitted. Generally, lots within the urban mixed-use precinct are smaller in size in comparison to the subject lands, and limiting accessory structures centralizes development. The overall proposal would be appropriate for the lands as it contributes to the functionality of the property. The gazebo provides the residents with increased amenity space between the 2 buildings. The carports consist of spots assigned to each of the basement units on the site in order to provide shelter for vehicles from weather elements. The deck attached to the detached garage has been proposed for the occupant of the 2nd-story dwelling unit to have outdoor privacy. Each of the proposed elements fits within the overall development and adds additional amenities to the site. The additional accessory structures do not appear to overcrowd the lot and have been placed in the most suitable locations given the existing development and topography. The reduction in the eastern side yard setback for all 3 carports does not impact access around the structures and continues to allow space for a vegetated buffer. The application was circulated in accordance with the Community Planning Permit Bylaw, and through staff's review and analysis, the application appears to meet the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. As such, staff are recommending the application be approved subject to the conditions of provisional approval and final approval as outlined in the recommendation within the report package. And thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much once again, Madeline. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. And once again, it's a lengthy motion, so do I have committee's permission to waive the reading? Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this? I don't see any, so all those in favor? And that carries all the way around, and I believe is there a second one related? No, nope, that's it. Okay, so we are going to move to CPP 152-2024 HT Barron 30 Otter Lake Cottage Road, and Kelsey is joining us for this. Thank you very much, Madeline, for 1, 2, 3, 4. What?
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 30 Otter Lake Cottage Road. The property is within the waterfront designation in the official plan and within the waterfront residential 60-meter precinct of the CPP with natural constraint 2 and 1 overlays. The application has been submitted for the construction of a 22 square meter addition to an existing legal non-complying dwelling and a 15 square meter deck, attached deck. The Class 3 CPP is required to reduce the front yard setback for the dwelling addition from 20 meters to 18 meters, reduce the front yard setback for the attached deck from 20 meters to 11 meters, and the following reductions would also apply to type 1 fish habitat. The required front yard setback for WR1, Waterfront Residential 1, is abutting a navigable waterway is 20 meters. The intention of the front yard setback is to ensure adequate distance for development from a water body or watercourse which is environmentally sensitive. Relief is also needed from type 1 fish habitat, which is identified along the north portion of the property along the shoreline, which type 1 fish habitat denotes fish habitat that's highly productive and generally rare and highly sensitive to development. The setback for type 1 fish habitat is 30 meters. The existing dwelling and attached deck are close to Otter Lake, encroaching into both these required setbacks. The dwelling was developed in its non-compliant location in 1975 with a second-story addition in 2009. The existing development was constructed with approvals into the standards of the time. The proposed addition has been designed to maintain the established building lines and not to further encroach into the required setbacks. The footprint is modest, fitting into the site appropriately and maintaining lot coverage compliance. The addition will also not exceed the height of the existing dwelling and match the massing and scale. The lot is long and narrow and is constrained by the water course along the northern property line and the rocky slopes to the south. The widest portion of the land is situated close to the lake, which has informed the location of existing development. The addition is proposed in the flat area, as you can see here. Let's see. In the flat area and requires minimal to no site alteration for construction and no vegetation removal. All existing mature vegetation and unique natural character are to be maintained, and vegetation will also be added to the shoreline to enhance screening and minimize impacts from the water. Type 1, as I mentioned, type 1 fish habitat was identified, so an assessment was provided to assess this in the proposed development. The report confirms that the shoreline area in front of the cottage can be classified as type 2 fish habitat, while the existing lake outlet is type 1. Looking at the proposed addition, there is potential impacts to runoff water quality entering Otter Lake from the subject property during construction and from the increased hard surfaces from construction. The report suggests mitigation measures that should protect water quality and the nearby aquatic ecosystem. These mitigation measures include silt fencing and straw bales being stockpiled on site to prepare for any breach to the silt fencing. It is also recommended that the existing vegetation is retained and further revegetation happens along the shoreline buffer. With these measures, the report concludes the proposed cottage addition will have a low likelihood of negatively impacting the ecological environment. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the CPP bylaw and the Planning Act. No objections were received and district does not oppose to the approval of the application. Through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear to conform with the intent of the OP and be consistent with the provincial planning statement. And therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Kelsey. So I would ask at this point if the applicant might be here electronically or their representative, and if they wish to speak to the application.
Chair Alcock, I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, I have a long motion. It has been moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Clark, and I would like to waive the reading of the rest of the motion. That's okay with everybody. Are there questions or comments with respect to this? I don't see it. Oh, yes, Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. I just had a comment. I approve the application, no problem about that. And I just want to say again how great the staff are when they take photos. They just take their best pictures. And I'm looking at these sometimes going, oh, I'd like to paint that. But there was one photo that you took, Kelsey, that has, is it the well with an owl on top? Is that to keep birds away? Is that, this is totally off topic, but I just wanted, you're always very detailed in your photographs.
Through you, Madam Chair. I was looking for photos that were more in season, so I actually used the photos from the report, from the environmental report, so those were taken. So I'm not sure, but I know at my cottage we have those in there to keep squirrels away. But yeah.
Thank you for that insightful planning question. That was great. I concur about the photographs. I think that's great. And you all do it, and it's really, really wonderful. Any other questions? I don't see any. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries all the way around. Thank you, everybody. So we are moving to, we don't have any previous business, so we do have a few short items under new business, but I have to pass a motion to suspend the rules. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Mover and a seconder, Councillor Morrison, followed by Councillor Renwick. Or Scott and Helena, one way. Thank you. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that the rules of procedure relating to additions to the agenda where public notice has not been provided be suspended to allow for discussion regarding the Canada Post strike and the snow event expected today, December 4th, 2024. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you for that. So we will go to the first item was I'm turning it over to Director Maxwell with respect to OLT appeals and decisions.
Thank you. I guess it's Chair, Mayor Alcock. What do I don't know what I call you. Sorry. In the package was a link to the OLT decision for Rachel's Lane. The town was not successful in defending our position, unfortunately. There was a discussion about how this can happen and whether or not the OLT, there's any sort of certainty anymore with when we go to the OLT, what things are happening. And it appears that there is no certainty at all now. So that was just sort of a recap. I don't know if Richard wanted to say anything about that one specifically. The other things that we were talking about was the Wilson appeal for the retaining wall over on King is the hearing was held in July and we're still waiting for a decision. So we don't know when that will be forthcoming. And also that an appeal has been submitted to the town for its lack of decision on the Woodsview subdivision up on Townland. So that one we will be coming back with a report at some point in January or February to talk about how council wants to address that.
And yes, Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. I just wanted to say, and I spoke to Richard about this prior to the meeting, that I actually read through the 62 pages. Well, I didn't get all the way through, but it was an interesting, it's an interesting process. It's a very lengthy process and very arduous at times, and I applaud staff on the work that you have to do when you go. Like I said, I didn't get quite through the entire thing, so I asked Richard how it ended, and he said that, no, we didn't, no, so, yeah.
No, looking at that decision, I started. I didn't get all the way through, but it was really disappointing. I look at we had this incredible case going forward and kind of dismissed. So it makes you wonder about our approach moving forward with any other OLT submissions and what the approach we take. Which, sometimes it's just one, right? Yeah. Yep. So, all right, any other questions? No? Okay, so we're going to move to item number 2, which is the Canada Post strike. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. As everyone obviously is aware, Canada Post has been on strike now for a few weeks. From a circulating of planning application requirements in the CPP bylaw, it requires us to provide notice by mail for applications that are coming to council for recommendation of approval or denial. The zoning bylaw amendments are slightly different. We can do those through online posting, and so there is a little bit more flexibility with it. But unfortunately, our notices for the January meeting have to go out no later than December 19th, I think, or 20th. So at this point, we don't feel comfortable moving forward if we know that the mail is not happening with circulating anything for the January meeting. So it's more just to let council know that likely if the strike is still on at that date, we would not be holding the January meeting at that point because we won't be able to provide the appropriate notice to the residents. So if the strike is still happening, if the strike is over and mail is flowing again before the 19th, then I think we would be able to circulate still. So we can provide an email update as to where we'd be at, but if the strike is still happening, we wouldn't be able to. So.
All right, question. Yeah, Councillor Morrison.
Thank you for all those updates. I mean, for our local postal workers, I hope they are back to work by then. I know they want to be. in light of keeping planning moving, would it be possible to consider a Purolator or FedEx? Would that be okay, or is it? I know it costs more, but I'm just wondering if that'd be something to consider.
We did actually speak to our solicitor about it for this meeting because we had mailed all of our notices before the strike happened, whether or not we should be doing something else to try and accommodate that. And he suggested that it wasn't an appropriate way to do it because it's not a method that's recognized in the Planning Act for providing notice. So it's, yeah, on newspapers, online, but yeah, it's actual just mail, so.
So we're, fingers crossed, we're really hopeful it's by 19th, and which that still is a bit of time. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mayor Alcock. What about hand-delivered options? Because I'm with Councillor Morrison. I don't like the idea of not keeping things moving. If we miss January, we're going to have a major backlog before too very long, so.
That we also asked about that too. The issue we run into is that not all of the property owners are the ones that are at the doors of the residences, and if we missed one, it would likely be worse than if we hadn't provided notice at all. And again, it's not a recognized method of providing notice in the Planning Act. So,
Councillor Morrison.
And thanks for looking into that already. I'm not surprised you have. And I guess to Corey's comments, if they don't live there, they're not going to be there for us to drop off the mail.
no, but it could be a tenant that's there that's
Could be a
getting the
tenant,
notice.
yeah.
So somebody could be receiving the notice, but at the same time, vacant properties, rural properties, we have no method of being able to.
But we do have their mailing address on the tax roll, right?
We have mailing addresses, but again, if we can't actually send it through the post,
Yeah.
it's not a recognized form of notice.
I think it just gets complicated.
It does, unfortunately.
So there was some suggestion that we would amend our own CPP bylaw so to accommodate this in the future. But even if we were to do that, it still won't be in time for the January meeting.
Yeah.
But it is something I think we need to revisit. So in case we're in a situation like this again, we're not tied.
Yeah,
Right?
and we have that on the list of potential future
As part of our housekeeping.
housekeeping updates. Yeah.
Okay. Well, 19th, let's really hope they're back by then.
It's still
Wow.
a few weeks.
That's still a couple of weeks anyway, right? They are they? Okay, good. All right, that's great. So, no, we don't have any more questions, but we have the last, sorry. I'm sorry, Dion. Councillor Schumacher.
Just a question in that the 19th is the meeting date. What time would they need to be back in order to get notices out?
No, the 19th is the last day to get
the
notices
deadline,
out.
okay.
Yeah, for the January meeting,
For the
right?
January.
Yeah, we weren't that clear.
Okay.
Okay. All right. With that, we're going to move to agenda item number 3, which is our snow event. And with this, I'm going to ask our CAO to join us, please. We just thought, I know that we received notice earlier today, but this was an opportunity for the public, whoever might be listening today, to hear about the update on our snow event.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Your Worship. So as all of you know, it's snowing quite a bit out there. And we did sort of survive the last snowfall that hit in the Muskoka region, but unfortunately this one is right over top of us. So we have been in constant contact with emergency services, including OPP and as well as our fire department. Early this morning, the Mayor, Director Bissonnette, Chief Monahan, myself, and support staff met with Staff Sergeant JP and just got an update on where things stand at the current time. So I have a few updates. The first one is on Highway 11. In discussions, the MTO has called in extra crews to ensure that they keep they're ahead of the snow so it doesn't get built up too much on them. They brought in additional resources that will remain in place until the anticipated snowfall has subsided. If the snow accumulation does get too far ahead of the maintenance, they will make the decision, most likely to close the highway so that they can stay on top of it and not have multiple vehicles stranded on the highway. The food drive is canceled for tonight. It has been rescheduled or will be rescheduled. And it's obviously due to weather and the resources are very limited because they're elsewhere with the storm. And a notice did go out yesterday advising people that they could drop their food off at the fire hall, so there was another option provided yesterday. We will keep our communications ongoing. Our OPP comms team will certainly work with our comms team
to provide regular updates to the community, and the release did go out earlier today regarding that. With respect to town operations, Director Bissonnette has just sent a notice out to council today about our current situation. The equipment is out and running and operators are on the road. And I did see a press release from the OPP encouraging people, if you don't have to be out in the road, please don't be. So I think we're in really good shape as of now. We'll keep council and the community posted and stay safe.
That's great. Thank you for that update. That I think is really helpful for anybody who might be listening. Are there any questions from council? That's because it was a thorough update. Thank you very much for that. That's great. And knowing that we have that line of communication open. I could go with that one first. Sorry, Rich. Okay, so I'm going to move right along to our confirmation bylaw. I have a motion moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2024-129 be received and passed this 4th day of December 2024. All those in favor? And that carries. And finally, better check to see what time. I have, what time is it? 4:05, okay. Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. Be it resolved that we do hereby adjourn at 4:05 p.m. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, everybody.